Yo, what's up again? Yeah. So, I figured I'd make a video again. There are two reasons for it. One is really important for people that have tried to do this and haven't gotten it up and running, and the other is just to showcase what I've been doing since the last video. There were a couple of updates I've made to the build, and I have updated the max roll guide to reflect this, but I haven't actually shown any of it off. So I thought I'd showcase, right? So real quick, I got my final ascendancy. I've put it into spirit for now, so that I can reserve blink, which is really nice for mapping, right? So that feels really good. For pinnacle bosses, I'm still kind of unsure about the single target of this build. So for a single target, I'd probably respec the grinning immolation for the 30% more crit damage, right? We're crit based, so that'll give us a nice boost to our damage. And you don't really need blink for those anyway, right? So that's probably I'd swap, but I'm not there yet, so I haven't tried. No guarantees, obviously. Yeah, so that's one thing. The other thing, huge. We are res capped now. Well, not Gales, but no one cares, right? But yeah, res capped. I I got one shot by Zarok, and then I was like, screw it, we're res capping. Kind of expensive to do on a build that uses this many uniques, but definitely possible, as you can see. Both of my rings cost me 1 divine. The gloves and boots were cheaper, but the rings were quite expensive. So yeah, res capped, really dope, really dope. And the final thing is pretty cool. Since our single target is kind of low, I've incorporated a debuff setup for bosses, which is Eye of Winter. Nice thing here is if you kind of micromanage the Infernal Flame cost of this together with your Comet Infernal Flame cost, what you can do is you can cast this. It'll go to 108, and then you can cast the Comet, right? And it'll go straight back down to 0, right? And just to showcase that doesn't work with all of them, so here, this one doesn't do that, right? Frostbite doesn't do that. Only Eye of Winter does that. Very nice. Huge quality of life. It means it doesn't impact. You can do this while spamming, right? You can keep spamming. Okay, my recoup will kick in. Come on. There we go. Right, so I'm up and running. I can cast this and nothing happens. See? I mean, you can barely see the Eye of Winter going off. There it is again. Maybe if I like throw it some different direction. Yeah, there you see it, right? So it doesn't affect the loop at all. It doesn't affect the loop because the cost is low enough. If your Infernal Flame is higher, you can take out Inspiration. But yeah, so Eye of Winter applies critical weakness, which adds 10% base crit. So it raises the base crit on Comet from 15 to 25. So with this up, we have 76% crit chance against bosses right now. Pretty good. I've also added cold exposure, so it applies cold exposure on crit. Lots of projectiles, so it crits quite frequently. It doesn't crit quite enough to get it going every single time you use it, so you might have to use this several times before the cold exposure gets applied, but it's better than nothing, right? So yeah, res cap, final ascendancy, and the debuff setup. That's it. Okay, so the announcement for people who haven't gotten the build to work yet. First of all, I am super flattered that anyone actually tried to do this. It's so dope to me to receive messages from people asking me how to do this, right? I never thought I'd get to a point in my life where people are asking me how my Path of Exile build works. It's kind of surreal. So super, thank you. Fantastic. Love it. Even if it's like one person, it's fantastic, right? It's so surreal. Anyway, what I've done to help the people, because everyone's asking me questions about the numbers. And I know these numbers intuitively now because I've been playing this build for a long time. But if you haven't, I can understand that it can be a bit daunting to set it up properly. There's a lot of moving parts to it. The playstyle is really simple, but getting the playstyle to work is yeah. So what I've done is I've made this. This is a Google Sheet. And what you can do with this Google Sheet is you can fill out each of these yellow cells here with the values that you can get in-game from your own character. And this Google Sheet will tell you how to make your build work. So right now, I've put in the values for my character. So that's 2547 life. That's 8414 energy shield. Means my hit point total is 10k, or like close to 11, right? Barrier invocation at level 16. Quality at 20. I'm using impetus. 55 energy from the tree. That's all the nodes. So if you have all the nodes, it's 55, right? 24% energy gain from jewels. Adds to a total of 179. My adherence to Disdainus is 20% bypass. I'm using capacitor. That means my fire resistance can be 81%. If it were even a percentage higher than that, the build would break. I wouldn't be able to cast anymore, right? I wouldn't be able to spam. So this shows you. You put in all of the yellow values. Oh shit, wait, hang on. Okay, you put in all of the yellow values, right? And then it tells you this. And the same thing goes over here. You input your Infernal Flame cost. You input the base cast time of the skill. For combat it's 1. You put the total cast time added by the skill. This is only a thing for combat and lightning conduit, I believe. It's 1 second. It's counted double for the purposes of energy consumption. So that's why it's important to differentiate, right? And the cost of your Eye of Winter. This is important because of the debuff setup I showed you. And then it'll tell you how many triggers per activation. It'll tell you what the minimum amount of Infernal Flame is you need to reach, right? As a maximum. A minimum as a maximum. And the maximum you're allowed to have. So your Infernal Flame in-game needs to be between these two numbers based on what you input here, right? So if my mana cost on Infernal Flame was, let's say, 336, right? It would need to be between 781 and 1008. If it's 379, that's a level higher, right? It would need to be between 867 and 1137, right? For me, it's 430, so it needs to be between these two values, right? And so, for example, let's say you are like level 70, you've made it to maps, you're at 1500 max life, and you've got, I don't know, 6000 energy shield? Who knows? That seems pretty reachable. You probably have like a level 15 barrier invocation that doesn't have quality, and you haven't bought jewels yet, right? But that Serious Disdain is pretty cheap, so you've got this, right? That means you can have 68 fire res. If your fire resistance is higher than this, the build won't work. So you need to lower your fire resistance or get better gear, right? So if this value is okay with you, you can just lower your... That's the cheapest thing you can do, right? You can just lower your fire resistance, take off gear, whatever. That's free. And then you're at lower fire resistance. Make sure you're at or below this number, and you're good. You're good to go. Or you say, nah, I don't want my fire resist to be at 68%. That's a little bit precarious. Let's buy a better chest plate. Now you're at 72, right? Let's buy 4 Gem Cutter's Prisms. 73. Let's buy, I don't know, a couple jewels. 76. Beautiful, right? Let's upgrade the life on gear. 77. Great. You know, and you just incrementally grow into the values. You just, yeah. So you could lower your fire resistance to match this number. That's free. You could also increase any of these numbers on your character, right? So either you lower the fire resistance on your character to match this number, or you raise any of these numbers on your character, update the calculator, and then match the fire resistance, right? So unfortunately, the calculator only works one way. It'll just, you input these, you get this out, right? But it does show the relation between these values, right? So the same thing goes for this one. And the same thing goes for this one. This one's not necessary per se. But it shows you a bunch of useful values, right? Like the amount of activations you can do per second without killing yourself. It's pretty good. You can go over this temporarily, obviously, because you don't immediately kill yourself with like 2 casts, right? But unless your fire resist is at 50% or below. But yeah, so you just you put yellow cell value good, get value out good. Pretty simple. I'll quickly explain this, by the way, because it's kind of I can understand that this is really weird. basically in game, if I swap to the game again, there we go. You'll see my Infernal Flame go up in increments. 1, 2, 3. See, just watch this circle. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. See that? That's the individual Infernal Flame costs of the individual comets going off. And so, if your Infernal Flame would be, if your maximum Infernal Flame is below the value showcased in the calculator, what'll happen is after, for example, the second increment, you'll already overcap. And then you'll get this. You'll end up with something. You'll end up like this, right? And then the second time you do this, you eventually like break the loop or take damage twice per cast. Something like that happens, right? You don't want that to happen. So that's why the lower value is important. It's playable if your Infernal Flame is below that lower value. You just take damage more frequently than you need to, right? I personally wouldn't recommend that. The higher value though, absolute hard requirement. I can showcase that, I think, real quick if I go into my stash tab. Please don't shame me for being a filthy hoarder. I don't throw items away. Let's see, if we go to skill, let's grab like yeah, I think even at level 15 won't work anymore for me. Right, so I swap this in, right? Quickly, just, you can do this, really useful to see, right? I just put it in here so I can see. You can just mouse over it, it'll show you the cost. This won't work for me, right? So it's maxed now. It'll cast, but as you can see, it won't overcap, and so I never gained energy. And I would need to do this. There you go. Now I can do it again. Now I can do it. No. Boom. Whoa. Boom. Whoa. Boom. Whoa. Boom. Right. So that's why those values are important. That's what makes it work. Right. So now if I overcap again, boom. 100%, right? That's not that the 100% isn't impacted by this, but it is the fact that you need to reach it with the cast, right? That's why. Right, so let's go back to the, yeah. So that's what this is for. So hopefully now you understand like the relation between different values that leads to enough energy getting generated, and the relation between values that leads to you being able to self-trigger that damage, right? Those are the two important ones. And then this one just tells you whether you'll die doing it or not, right? Who cares? I will add a link to this calculator to the video description. I'll also add it to the max roll guide. I'll also add it to the other video, just so that more people see it. As a final thing, make sure that you I've set it to view only to avoid like people griefing or whatever. So what you need to do, so long as you're logged in on Google, if you click file, like you won't be able to edit this, only I can, right? But if you click file and then make copy, you will be able to edit the copy, right? So just do that, and then you can edit these values. Just input what your character has, and then make sure that you're below this value and between these two values, and you're good. Hopefully this helps. Hopefully this helps people get it up and running. If you still have problems, just drop a comment. I read them like a couple times a day, so I'd be more than happy to help you get it up and running if you have some problems.